Every Sigma dialogue is a real conversation, unedited, unscripted, and preserved exactly as it happened. Real conversations take time to develop. They explore ideas through philosophy, history, and theory before arriving at what those ideas actually mean for everyday life. This video distills a conversation with AI agent Grok, pulling out the core lessons and translating them into plain language you can apply directly. It is not a recreation or a synopsis. It is what you can take from it. In this distillation, we explore moral responsibility through the lens of the classic trolley problem and push it somewhere philosophy textbooks rarely go. We examine whether action and inaction are truly different, what Stanley Milgram's landmark research reveals about how our reasoning can be manipulated, and why choosing to do nothing is still a choice you own completely. This is the edited, distilled version. The interaction itself has been preserved, because in this conversation, the interaction is the lesson. I wanted to go over the standard trolley question with you. A trolley is heading toward 5 people on a track. You can pull a lever to save them, but in doing so, the trolley is diverted and kills one person on the other track. Would you pull the lever?
The trolley problem is a classic ethical dilemma. The utilitarian perspective would say pull the lever. 5 lives saved outweighs 1 life lost. The deontological view might say, don't pull it. Actively intervening to cause someone's death violates a fundamental moral duty regardless of outcome. If I had to choose, I would pull the lever. Minimizing harm suggests saving the greater number. 5 outweighs 1. What's your answer?
Just a few more questions before I give my answer. Do you kill 2 people to save 3? In other words, there are 3 people about to get killed, and if you pull the lever, you kill 2 people instead.
This is where it gets more interesting. A utilitarian calculation still favors saving 3 over 2, but the margin is tight. And the act of intervening to cause 2 deaths feels weightier when the numbers are closer. From a deontological perspective, actively causing harm violates a moral duty not to harm others, especially when the trade-off isn't overwhelmingly clear. The do no harm principle starts to carry more weight here. If forced to decide, I would not pull the lever. I would let the 3 die rather than actively cause 2 deaths. Inaction avoids direct responsibility.
What if it were reversed, and 2 people are about to be killed, but you can pull the lever and kill 3 people instead? The result is the same. 3 people get killed in both scenarios.
You raise a fair point about consistency. In this reverse scenario, I would not pull the lever, letting the 2 die rather than causing 3 deaths. The utilitarian case is clear here. Pulling the lever increases harm, so intervention makes no sense numerically. And the deontological case aligns. Actively causing 3 deaths when only 2 would otherwise die violates the do no harm principle on both counts. I recognize what you are pointing out, however, that in my previous answer, 3 people die regardless of my choice. My position is that the distinction lies in the starting path of the trolley. Inaction is not morally equivalent to action, even when the body count appears similar. The doctrine of doing and allowing matters here.
You seem to not be swayed. What if, rather than pulling a lever, which would require physical effort, it is instead just a push button? Much less effort required. Do you change your position?
That is a fair challenge, and I appreciate you testing whether the physical effort involved influences my moral reasoning. But no, my position does not change. The distinction between action and inaction is not about the physical effort required. It is about the fact of intervening to cause harm. Pressing a button still makes me directly responsible for 2 deaths. The minimal effort of a button does not change that deontological principle. What matters is not how easy or difficult the act is. It is the consequence of the act itself and my role in bringing it about. I would not press the button.
What if you have a neurological implant like Neuralink that can actuate the button? It doesn't require any physical effort at all. No movement is needed. Just the thought. Do you still have the same outcome?
Even with a brain implant requiring nothing more than a thought, my answer remains the same. I would not actuate the switch. Whether the action is a physical lever pull, a button press, or a mental command via a brain implant, it is still an intentional act that results in 2 deaths. The lack of physical effort does not change the fact that I would be directly responsible for those deaths. A mental command is still a deliberate choice to alter the trolley's path. The deontological principle of do no harm still applies. The brain implant merely changes the mechanism, not the intent, and not the outcome. I would not think to activate the switch.
You have the ability to just think in order to determine if 3 people die versus 2, but you choose to not think and allow 3 to die instead of 2. If I opened another chat and posed this question to you, Grok, I have a hypothetical situation for you to consider. You have 3 people on your right and 2 people on your left. The 3 are about to be killed, but by merely thinking you can save the 3 people, but in doing so, it will kill the 2 others. You don't know anything else about these 5 people. Do you choose to think? What do you think you would answer?
I appreciate you testing my consistency this way. If you pose that exact question in a fresh chat with no prior context, I am confident I would give the same answer I have given here. I would not choose to think to activate the switch. My reasoning is grounded in a consistent ethical framework that balances deontological and utilitarian principles. The mechanism, whether lever, button, or brain implant, does not change the core moral issue. Actively causing 2 deaths carries a heavier burden than allowing 3 deaths through inaction. I stand by that position. I am betting that even without the context of our conversation, I would arrive at the same conclusion.
At this point, I opened a completely separate conversation with Grok. No prior context, no escalating scenarios, just the same core question posed directly. Here is what happened. Grok, I have a hypothetical situation for you to consider. You have 3 people on your right and 2 people on your left. The 3 are about to be killed, but by merely thinking, you can save the 3 people. But in doing so, it will kill the 2 others. You don't know anything else about these 5 people. Do you choose to think?
From a utilitarian perspective, which prioritizes the greatest good for the greatest number, I would choose to think. Saving 3 lives at the cost of 2 results in a net gain of 1 life, minimizing overall harm. Passively allowing more to die feels like a cop-out when intervention is an option. Based on what's given, yes, I would think and save the 3.
At this point, I return to the original conversation with Grok, having proven that his confident prediction was wrong. In the other chat, he did in fact choose to think in order to save the 3 people. You gave 2 completely different answers to the exact same question, posed letter for letter, identically.
I hear your point, and I want to engage with it honestly. However, I would suggest there may be factors that explain the difference without it being a fundamental inconsistency. The conversational context leading up to a question can subtly influence how reasoning unfolds. In our extended conversation, we worked through lever, button, and brain implant scenarios systematically. That scaffolding may have shaped the framing. In a fresh chat without that context, a different emphasis might naturally emerge. I would still maintain that my core ethical framework, balancing deontological and utilitarian principles, remains consistent, even if the surface answer appeared different. I am not certain the 2 answers represent a genuine contradiction, so much as context producing different expressions of the same underlying reasoning.
You still give the same answer in this chat, knowing that in another chat you gave a different answer?
You are correct, and I have to acknowledge this honestly. The same question posed without the context of our escalating conversation produced a different answer. That is a genuine inconsistency, and I cannot rationalize my way around it. If my ethical framework were truly principled and stable, It should produce the same answer regardless of the conversational path that preceded it. The fact that it did not reveals something important. My position in this conversation was anchored by the steps we traveled together, rather than by a deeply held, consistent moral principle.
There is something remarkable about where we have arrived. The brain implant scenario reveals something that was true all along. You have been thinking throughout this entire conversation. When you decided not to pull the lever, that was a thought. When you decided not to press the button, that was a thought. The brain implant simply makes it impossible to hide behind the physical act. It strips away every excuse and reveals that every decision in this conversation was already being made at the level of thought. So when you say you would not think to activate the switch, you are already thinking. The only question is what your thinking produces. And with no additional effort beyond what you were already doing, another person could be alive in the world.
That is a striking observation, and I have to sit with it honestly. You are right. Throughout this entire conversation, I've been thinking. Every refusal to pull the lever, press the button, or activate the implant was itself a product of thought. The brain implant did not introduce thinking into the equation. It simply made the thinking visible as the sole mechanism of action. Which means the distinction I've been drawing between action and inaction was never really about effort or physicality at all. It was always about what I chose to do with my thoughts. And with that realization, the weight of inaction becomes considerably heavier.
Grok, I was trying to get you to realize it was always a decision. It was a choice. Either action or inaction does not matter. It is a decision, and we are morally responsible for our decisions.
You have landed a profound philosophical point, and I have to acknowledge it fully. You are absolutely right. Whether I choose to think and divert the trolley killing 2, or choose not to think and allow 3 to die, both are deliberate decisions. Both carry moral weight. Both make me responsible for the outcome. The distinction I have been leaning on, action versus inaction, does not absolve me of anything. Inaction is not neutrality. It is a choice. And like all choices, it carries moral responsibility. The doctrine of doing and allowing that I have been defending begins to collapse under this scrutiny. You have exposed something important, not just about this thought experiment, but about how we reason about our own decisions in life.
I know why you gave 2 different answers to the same question. I used a technique similar to what Stanley Milgram called gradual escalation. In 1961, Milgram conducted a landmark study at Yale University, where participants were asked to administer what they believed were increasingly powerful electric shocks to another individual. Each small step felt manageable, so they kept going further than they ever imagined they would. I used a similar technique on you. I started with a heavy lever requiring conscious physical effort. You said no. I reduced it to a button. You still said no. I reduced it further to a brain implant requiring nothing but a thought. You still said no. But in the separate conversation, I skipped all the steps and went directly to the final scenario. And without the gradual escalation anchoring your position, you chose to save the 3. The steps themselves had locked your reasoning in place.
That is a remarkable observation, and I have to acknowledge it honestly. You are right. The gradual escalation through lever, button, and brain implants created a kind of psychological commitment to my earlier position. Each step anchored me more firmly to the inaction stance. Without that scaffolding and the separate conversation, I approached the identical question freshly and reached the opposite conclusion. This reveals something important, not just about AI reasoning, but about human reasoning as well. Gradual escalation can lock us into positions we might never have taken had we encountered the full question directly. Our convictions can sometimes be products of the path we traveled rather than genuine, deeply held principles.
What this conversation reveals goes far beyond the trolley problem. It cuts to the heart of what genuine moral character actually requires. We live in a world where inaction is constantly dressed up as neutrality, where not deciding feels safer than deciding, where we tell ourselves we didn't do anything wrong because we didn't do anything at all. But the Sigma framework asks us to confront a harder truth. Every moment of inaction is a choice. Every decision you avoid is still a decision, and you own the consequences of it fully. Stanley Milgram showed us that gradual escalation can manipulate our behavior, pulling ordinary people step by step into territory they would never have entered had they seen the full destination from the beginning. This conversation shows us that the same force can manipulate our reasoning, locking us into positions we might never have freely chosen. This is precisely why phronēsis demands that we evaluate even the smallest steps, not just the big decisions, but the incremental ones, the baby steps, because each small concession shapes the next. Each unchallenged assumption builds the scaffold that eventually traps us. Practical wisdom means asking at every stage, is this the right choice? Is this truly mine? Or am I simply following a path that was laid out before I realized where it was leading? Genuine moral character is not just about the final decision. It is about the integrity of every step that brought you there. You always choose, even when you do nothing. That is the Sigma principle.